Now with the modern age, there's just so many more opportunities. There's so many more ways to make money. Like even Shark Tank, you're looking at all these like business ideas, how people have actually done it. And so then using that and knowing that that's also a pathway to go rather than just getting a job and being stuck in the 9 to 5.
How does one influence a 16-year-old who does not want to invest themselves in understanding a why?
Yeah, so for me, like one of the main things was,
Welcome to another episode of the Ignited Neurons Podcast. Today is a very different one. You don't see me in a black jacket, and the person on the other side is 16 years old. So as I was preparing for this conversation, I was thinking to myself, if I were to ask Jia, what would that 8-year-old self come and talk to you about? I will be intrigued for that answer. But before we get to that, if you're someone who is in your teenage years and is wanting to achieve financial freedom, then this episode is for you. If you're a parent who wants to influence your teenager to put them on a path of writing a book, of going from class clown to wealth wizard, and want to have them buy their first property at about 18 or 19 years old in Melbourne, in Australia, then this episode is for you. Hi, Jia. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I was thinking through so you're 16 years old.
Yeah.
My elder son is 14. And for me, it's a very unique experience to be interviewing someone who's in that age group. And I'd love for you to use, if there is a lingo that I don't understand, use that lingo that you would use as within your peer group, because that'll be a learning for me. Does that work?
Yeah, awesome. I'm so
Awesome.
excited.
Let's go for it. So the first question, Jia, that we typically ask is that if that 8-year-old self were to come and meet you right now, what kind of a conversation will emerge between you and that 8-year-old Jia?
I think probably just like the wow factor. I think since I was 8 years old, I'm now 16. So over that last 8 years, I think I've done and achieved so many things that my 8-year-old self would just be like, wow, like just keep going. And it's just amazing what you're doing and just keep pushing through.
As an 8-year-old, did you ever imagine to be writing books or to be going down that path? Like, picture this make us really visualize this, because at 8 years old, you're playing with your dolls, you're playing maybe footy, you're playing basketball, you're just growing up as a little almost baby, right? 8 years is very young. So
yeah,
what happened between 8 and 16 that this happened?
Honestly, it's probably the influence from my parents, like, because of how much they've been able, like, the knowledge and the mindset that they've been able to put into me. That's what's motivated me to keep going, especially because obviously I didn't expect me to be doing all of this when I was 8 years old. I didn't know much about property or financial freedom or financial literacy. It was all very new topics. And honestly, if she saw me now, then it'd be very, very different.
And so we will divide this conversation into different parts, right? I want to kind of first understand that when your parents were speaking to your 8-year-old self and your 10-year-old self and your 12-year self, how did that conversation kind of open up? Because my understanding is that if a parent is trying to convince a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old to do something that might have a long-term gratification, right, to attach to it. It's not like, I want a chocolate right now, let me go to Kohl's and buy one. It's more like, can you start saving right now for it to compound and for you to be able to buy a property? So how did this idea settle in for you as a 10, 12-year-old?
I think it was more about like how hardworking I already was. Like when I was 8 years old, I was willing to put myself out there. Like I did a lot of swimming, netball. Like I still do netball, but just putting myself out there and having that hard workingness. I also did the selective test, which is in New South Wales in year 6. I'm not sure what age that was, but that's like I had to work a lot and put a lot of my energy and time into that. And then I'm able to see the benefits I've gotten out of that, like having the awesome school community now. I'm able to have that, like, those benefits and like be grateful for those.
So I'm understanding that you were already a hardworking kid who, when given the right kind of environment with the right kind of nudges, was able to stay on the path, is what I'm understanding.
100%. But I think it wasn't just me coming, like, not just me from within. It was also my influences, like the support community I had, my friends, my parents. They were all able to like influence me in the right way and then like empower me to do even more.
Where are these kids? Because you know how, and I'll be very honest. I want to have like a candid conversation with you, as a parent to two kids who are 14 and 11. Part of me is always worried for them that they're surrounded by a lot of technology, a lot of TikTok, a lot of YouTube, a lot of so much that they might lose their edge. So how did that play out for you between 10 and now?
Definitely. So when I was 12, I think, in year 7, that's when COVID hit. So that's when we were able to have like the technology and all of that. We were very exposed to that. But I think definitely I've been a victim of, social media, TikTok, all of that, the endless scrolling. But it's more about having the motivation on the side of that and then like knowing what your why is and then focusing your energy on that rather than just wasting time on like social media.
For a 40-year-old, this makes sense that you have
Yeah.
to know your why, and I understand where this is coming from. But how does your brain function for it? And help me understand through your peer group, right? Because not everyone in your peer group might have a why, and it's not wrong for them to not have a why, but it's better for you to have a why, right? So how does that dynamic play out for you?
Yeah, I think for my peer group now, we're very like academic focused because it is a selective school. So we're all working towards our HSC. And so we do have that like motivation or that like the reason why we need to be hardworking. So then it was just like for me, it was more just changing the direction of the energy that I was putting in. So focusing more on the long term rather than just getting a good ATAR, a good uni degree, and then get a good job after that.
Hmm. And so you're saying that even as a 16-year-old right now, you're thinking more long term than that's just the 8 hour score, or just the uni degree. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And because now with the modern age, there's just so many more opportunities. There's so many more ways to make money. Like even Shark Tank, you're looking at all these like business ideas, how people have actually done it. And so then using that and knowing that that's also a pathway to go rather than just getting a job and being stuck in the 9 to 5.
How does one nudge a 16-year-old who does not have this clarity, who does not know what their why is, who does not care about Shark Tank or financial freedom or whatever? These are big terms, right?
Yeah.
So how would you help someone? And let's maybe go through that journey and help me understand. How does one influence a 16-year-old who does not want to invest themselves in understanding a why?
Definitely. I think for me, it didn't just come up when I was 16 and say, oh, now you're 16, start doing all these things, It was more like over the years, I was taught this like mindset and like all this knowledge, I was taught it. And like even seeing it myself, I was able to witness the impacts of this, the benefits of it, and even like the cost of not doing it, the opportunity cost, if I wasn't putting like my energy into one direction. So I think it was more about like over the years. It wasn't just something that I learned when I was 16 and now I'm doing it. It's something that has been taught to me from day one.
Got it. So give me a few examples, Gia, because I'm really interested. If, say, we're about 10 minutes into the conversation, and if the parents who are listening or teenagers who are listening, they're still with us here and they feel this is a conversation that they can listen to till the end of the next whatever time we spend, what do you think are some real-time behaviors you saw, some actions you saw, some things that you were influenced by, maybe stories, books? I don't know what that might look like. So can you share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so for me, like one of the main things was, learning risk and reward. So all the energy and like time I put into studying for selective, I was able to see what I had gotten from that by getting into the admission of the school. Or even just a very simple example. When I was 8 years old, actually, that's when my dad was renovating one of his investment properties, and my family went to go see um his project, and he said, like, if you help paint this door, then I'll give you a cupcake. So obviously I wanted the cupcake, so I went in and did whatever I had to get the cupcake. So just like that, those are just some small learnings that helped put me into the mindset of risk and reward, or like you have to be hardworking, or you need to know why you're doing it. Like if my dad said, help me paint this door, like more hands the merrier, I maybe would have done it, but I don't know if I would have. But knowing that there's the reward of having the cupcake, that's what motivated me to keep going and actually help.
I love that idea. You saw that by putting in the hard work, by putting in some effort, whether it was to paint the door, whether it was to study for your exams really well, the selective exams, there was a reward at the end of the tunnel. And that's what prompted and motivated you to do that. What else? Did they influence you with some stories? Was the content that you were watching, was that supporting you in any way?
Yeah, so firstly, the content thing, I have a younger sister. So with her, I was still watching movies, doing what a 8-year-old would do. My but my parents, they started a business in 2020, and that's when I was first really getting exposed to the idea of owning a business, or the idea of making multiple streams of income. So that's when I first learned, like, the other opportunities that you have rather than just being employed and working under a boss.
Got it. And so you're doing all the things that the 8 to 16-year-old Jia would do, having fun with your younger sister, you said, and then still understanding these nuances of what does owning a business look like and things like that. Now, this idea that risk reward and the reward will kind of prompt you to do something, seeing a shift in you, and this could be just an observation and you can dismiss it on the podcast. We feel very comfortable having this open conversation. The shift is that maybe the 9 or 10-year-old Jia would have painted a door just because she would get a cupcake. But now the 16-year-old Jia is self-driven. She reached out to me twice or thrice. I think we had multiple conversations, email exchanges, that I want to be on the podcast, and Utkarsh, how can we make this happen? So that is something. There's no cupcake here, right? I'm not sending you a cupcake at the end of this conversation.
Yeah.
So what shifted that extrinsic motivation? And these are big concepts of psychology which you would have played through, but maybe So what helped you shift from the extrinsic motivation of the cupcake to the intrinsic motivation that I need this?
I think it's maybe about the having the trust. Like, I know that it's just like, for the example you said, being on the podcast, I know that would be a good thing for me. It'll be a learning experience, confidence booster. It'll help your audience as well. So then I have the trust in what I'm doing and the actions I'm taking to say, like, oh yes, it'll be a good thing in the future. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's more about having, because obviously I don't always come up with like all the things that I do. Like, I've had my parents tell me like, oh, this would be a cool thing, but then like a cool thing to do. So I'm the one who's trusting them in saying, yes, I should do it, because I have that trust in them again.
Fascinating. I love where this conversation is going. So we spoke about reward, then we're speaking about this idea that now, from going from that extrinsic motivation, you've reached a place where you understand that how an action of yours could lead to a reward at the end, and the reward might not be a cupcake, but it will be something else.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate that. Awesome. The title of the book, and thank you for sending the copy. Whenever I look at it, I feel intrigued. What made you write about being a class clown, if I remember the name correctly, to a wealth wizard?
Yeah.
What played through that?
Yeah, so obviously the story isn't about me, myself, but it is a fiction book. So it's about that transformation that the main character, Sam, had from high school until his high school reunion 20 years later. So then it was more about showing that transformation, that even if you are a class clown, you can still make something even better version of yourself. And like showing that as well, like, it's a regular Aussie who's just trying to do something good for themselves, and they're able to do it because of the actions they've taken and the mindset that they've instilled in themselves.
You're again very very seamlessly and very easily using this word mindset. But again, for a 16-year-old, it's a big word. So my mind is like again taking me back to this idea that Jia right here is just 16 years old, which is a young age. This whole idea about building the mindset, what kind of a mindset do you operate with if you were to define your own mindset?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that one specifically. But I think more about the law of attraction. I'm sure you might have heard of or read the book The Secret.
Yeah.
Or it's on Netflix as well. But it's basically about what you think about, like positive thinking will lead to positive outcomes. So having those positive thoughts always, not always, but like as much as you can, more than your negative thoughts. And then that's what will be attracted to you in the universe.
Yeah. For listeners who are listening, we're actually being honest here. Jia is 16 years old. She just has this beautiful view of the world, which I truly appreciate, Jia. So thank you for sharing that. I want to have us go to this idea of financial freedom. I don't think there's a human being on the planet who does not desire/dream of financial freedom. Some are comfortable speaking about it, and some have it hidden in their heart's desire to reach that state. If you were to really simplify it, what does financial freedom really mean?
That's an awesome question. I think there is a bit of a, like, people don't really know what the meaning of financial freedom is. People, when they think of that, it's basically them retiring from their job and just sitting around on the beach, like having drinks, doing whatever they want to do. But, like they're just not working. And that's what they envision financial freedom to do. Like, that's what it is. But I want to change that definition. I think financial freedom is what gives you the opportunities. It's what is actually allowing you to do whatever you wanted to do. Like, say, for example, I want to be like a painter, but I might know that I can't make enough income from being a painter for it to work for me. So I might just leave that aside and just not do anything with it. But the point of financial freedom is having those streams of income. So then that's making you money, and then it allows you to do whatever you want to do. So then I can finally be a painter because that's what I actually want to do, rather than doing whatever I have to just to make the money to make myself a living.
Interesting. So what you're saying is, if someone's educated themselves to be an engineer and they are a product manager, they've done their MBA and they're 28, 30 years old. They do their work. They spend 12 hours a day on work. I mean, Australia has rules around work-life balance, but the other parts of the world don't. And they love to travel. But they have to end up being product managers because they have to support a family, buy a house, or whatever that might look like for them. But what you're saying, financial freedom to that person, Jamie maybe, what financial freedom to Jamie would be is that they have enough money so that they can choose to do whatever they want to choose, which is to travel or not. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like, even for me, that example relates because I want to be able to travel in the future. So for me, I need to be able to make money elsewhere, have that passive income, so I can do what I want to do, like traveling around the world.
Okay, so we've understood this idea of financial freedom. Let's go one step. So the next step to me, the next question that arises in my mind is, why should a 16-year-old or a 20-year-old be worried about financial freedom? Because I'm playing the devil's advocate. I understand the concept, but I want to play the devil's advocate here and say, let me get to 35 and then I'll think of financial freedom. What's the harm with that, Jia?
I think the important thing is starting earlier. And it's not just about when you want to, that's when you start. I think even for me, or like anyone of my friends or anyone my age, they might not know what they want to do with the future yet. But they know that they definitely want to do something in the future. So then, and for that, you have to have the money. And it's not just about money. You also want to invest in your knowledge, your mindset. And if you don't invest in it now, then it's not going to be able to compound into something even better. And I mentioned compounding because it's basically like a plant. So if I plant a seed into the ground and I water that plant every single day, for the first month or two, I might not see a single sprout or a leaf or anything. I'm just practically watering some dirt. But then after like in 2 months, you might see that there's so much coming out of it, or maybe even like further down the track, like a year, 2 years, you'll see so much coming out of it. And then like 10 years, 20 years later, you might see a tree and that's giving you fruits. So it's like getting that back. So even though right now you're watering some dirt, in the future, you'll be receiving those fruits from your hard work from now.
Yeah. So real. That example is very, very beautifully shared. Not recently, 4 months ago, put some eggplant seeds in our backyard. The first, I think, 8 weeks, there was nothing there. And then the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, there was a plant, but it was just a plant. And you would feel like, oh, there's never going to be an eggplant out of this.
Yeah.
And the last 6 weeks, we've had about 2 to 3 eggplants a week. And now we try and figure out like what do we do with so many eggplants. But I agree with what you're saying. So we've understood this idea of compounding, and what you're saying is that the younger you start this idea of compounding, the larger will be the outcome that you'll be able to build through that.
Definitely.
But how does one start? Because say, okay, let me take my son's example. Get some pocket money each month, maybe $100, $200, whatever that might look like. He has some savings that he has been able to build, say $3,000. Now, with just that amount of money, it'll feel overwhelming that what can $50 or $200 a month do? So give me like a real example. Let's think of another person. Let's call them Lauren. I don't know why these names are emerging in my head. Let's look at Lauren. She's 16 years old. She gets a pocket money and you decide the amount. How does she look at compounding?
Okay, so let's say it's like $50 that she's getting every month, let's say. So basically, the importance is to save the money, right? Because of course you're still going to want to spend the money, because if you're getting $50, I'm sure there's not a single 16-year-old who will save the entire $50. And I wouldn't say to do that either, because I don't personally either. And I think the main part is just having that consistency. Say every month I'll save, like, out of the $50, I'll save $20.
Okay.
That's 40%. And I'll put that aside. And in the future, I can use that to invest. Even if that's investing in my knowledge or if it's investing like with money. So then even if you don't know what you're doing with it now, I think the consistency and the amount of times that you put that money aside, the bigger it's going to grow. And then when you do know, if you don't know now, then when you do know, then you have a lot of money to put into that outcome, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. So what you're saying is that build a habit young, which is to save some amount, and the number that you chose was 40%. But you find that and save that money so that it builds habit, and then over a period of say 2 to 3 years, by the time you're 18, you would have saved enough to start investing in whatever that might look like. And I love what you shared here, which is that at times it's okay to also invest in your knowledge, because that might have a 10x or a 100x output if you invest in the right skill. What has worked for you? Because it still feels like almost unbelievable that someone at the age of, say, between 18 and 20 years would be on their way to buying a property. So what worked for Jia?
I think for me, it was more about, again, having that trust. Like, my parents were the one who was saying, it'd be better if you're saving and putting that money aside. At first, of course, I didn't really know what they were saying. I wanted to spend the money. But having that trust in the concept of compounding and saving, and then using that to keep on saving. So, for example, my friends, a lot of them have jobs, and we actually have a petrol pump across the road. So I see a lot of my friends who are always, going across the street during our breaks and then, buying a coffee or buying a hot chocolate or buying like some lollies. And I obviously don't say it out loud, but I begin to question like where exactly, like, how do you have the capacity to be spending that much every single day? And of course, I'm not saying that I never go across the street to buy food. I do as well, but it's more about having that habit and having the motivation to just keep putting aside that money and having that number. Like maybe every week I'll spend $10 at the servo, and then having that resistance because you know that the rest of the money is going to a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great example, Jen. I often question, and I don't know, I read it somewhere, but it's been stuck in my head for the longest, that instead of going out and buying a cup of coffee for $6, if I start investing that $6 into Bitcoin, and I'm not promoting cryptocurrency, that's a personal choice. But if you were to do something like that over 10 years, that coffee is gone to dust, right? But that investment would make something out of it. And as you pointed out, it's not that you never enjoy a cup of coffee outside in the cafe, but it's where do you find your balance? I think that's
Exactly.
if you're challenging.
Yeah, and I think mentioning balance as well, it's about mentioning the short-term satisfaction and the long-term satisfaction.
Yeah.
So how much do you want to put into each one, and focusing on keeping that balance to make sure that everything is still going in the right direction.
I did not imagine having this conversation with a 16-year-old, but I often wonder where is the limit of your kind of contentment, right? It can come from not spending much, and it can come from spending $100 a day and still feel like I don't get to spend enough. So it's a balance that I think lies for each one for their own, but everyone should at least aim to achieve that balance at the earliest.
Definitely.
Beautiful. This idea of buying a property, to our listeners in Australia, it might make sense. But I moved to Australia only 2 years ago. So moving from India to Australia, it was always questioned that do you really need to invest in a property because the property, the depreciation or the increase or the maintenance cost, there's so many if then scenarios there. But what's your perspective? How do you find investing in property is valuable, and how do you approach this?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to what we mentioned before, the financial freedom. So like you mentioned, everyone wants financial freedom. And I think property is just one of the ways that you can achieve that. I'm not saying it's the best way and the only way. It's just the way that I personally believe is the right path for me. But I'm not saying it's the right path for you. So it's more about taking the property is what's making the money alongside. Like I don't have a property, but I wouldn't have to touch or like do anything to that property to keep making money. I don't need to, ring the tenant every single day saying, is my property fine? But like in that sense, it's not something that you're doing every single second of the day to keep getting that money. It's more about putting that investment in and getting the fruits from that investment without having to like water the plant every day. So especially having the right team around you, even though you have to pay a bit more to get a mortgage broker or like a property manager, they're the ones who manage it for you. Right. And then they can do the work for you while you make the profits.
Yeah. It's interesting. So one way you're saying is investing in properties. What other ways would you recommend our listeners, Gia, if they were to achieve and go as broad and as wide as you want to, or as narrow, up to you. But if someone were to be listening right now and thinking, I want to be financially free, what are some of the paths that they can look at?
Yeah. So of course, this isn't financial advice, but there's also like shares that is often talked about, or cryptocurrency, even starting your own business, even though that does take a bit more effort. Having those first 2 years where you scale up the business and then pass it down to other people to manage, then that also counts as an investment. But there's also a bunch of other ways, like, Like my dad's done this before when he was younger. He bought some comic books from a store and then he used to rent it to his friends for like 10 cents per day. And then he was able to make money. Of course, that's a very simple example and people probably don't use comic books anymore.
Yeah. But you could find something else that is
Yeah.
in that domain. I agree with that. And yeah, absolutely. This is not financial advice. We are not, we don't know who's listening and what their current state is. So they should not take this on as going and doing what you and I are speaking about. As you now go through this journey, how do your peers feel about this? Because I'm pretty sure you opened up to them in a certain way. And so what do you see? Like, do they get inspired? They feel like, let Jia do her thing. We're not interested.
Yeah, I think it was more at the start. So I only published my book last year in
Mhm.
October,
Mm.
so in year 11. And before then, not a lot of people knew about what I was doing outside of school or what I'd been working towards. Like writing the book was a big, big task. And so I think it came with a lot of shock when people did find out. And then also encouragement. Like I had told like my closest friends, but it wasn't something that I had, gone around and blurted out to everyone because honestly, I was still doubtful about myself. Like I wasn't too sure if that was something that I wanted to do until I kept doing it, if that makes sense. Like I knew people wouldn't really trust me at the time. So it was more about like making my own thing and then showing it to people, like what I've done. So not just shock and not, but also like encouragement. And there was, of course, some people who, well, seemingly to me that they were jealous as well. Like, wow, she's doing so much. I wish I could do that.
Yeah. How do you manage at 16 years old to be writing a book, to be thinking about your investments slash your property, to be maybe supporting your parents in their business, to be then being in a selective school, to be then thinking of what uni do you want to and what not want to go? What keeps you sane through all of this?
Probably my parents and my sister. I think my sister always brings out like the more childish, like aspect of me. Like I'm always eager to like have fun with her. But then my parents also help keep my direction. So they're the ones guiding me through like what I should and should not be doing. Like if I was to make a decision, then they're there to help me. Like what are the pros and cons of you doing this and what are the pros and cons of you not doing this?
Okay, so that's more of emotional support, and you should clip this part and send it to your sister so that she feels that she got a shout out on the podcast.
She always loves that.
Amazing. So we'll absolutely try and do that. But what beyond that? Like, do you build some systems? Do you use some productivity hacks? What keeps you on track?
Yeah, so I definitely have a to-do list and I think it's the most fun thing ever when I get to tick off my to-do list. I know a lot of people say it and it's probably cliche, but there is a lot of joy in that. Sometimes I do something that's not on my to-do list, so I write it down just for me to tick it off, despite me already doing it. But yeah, I think having that to-do list is very important and then focusing. And also the main part is keeping the priority as well. So if I have 10 things on my to-do list, I'll try focus on the things that is most important,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. So the to-do list is really helpful, and I agree. Striking through or cutting when you get things done is pure bliss. It's joy. Um, and then you spoke about your parents and your sister. They keep you on track, which is great to hear. Is your sister on a similar path, or is she a very different person from who you are?
I think, well, she's in year 8, so just starting out, and she's very, very hardworking. She used to do gymnastics where she did like almost 20 hours per week, so very, very hardworking. But definitely, I think she's still yet to find something to really put her niche into and then focus on that completely. But definitely, there's a bright future for her.
She has a good role model walking along the path with her. So I'm pretty sure that she'll also find something that's beautiful and meaningful at the right time. If now, Gio, we've spoken about financial literacy, compounding. We spoke about all that one needs to do, how to differentiate between the short term slash the long term gratification. But say a few years from now, I typically, when I have guests, they're in their 30s and 40s and maybe 50s and sometimes even in 80s. But for a 16-year-old, it might be a very difficult question. So I'm going to modify it. What I typically ask is if the 80-year-old Jia, 80, which is in about 64 years, if my math serves me right, 64 years from now, instead of asking you that, if your future self, say a few decades from now, were to come back and give you one piece of advice on how to lead the next few decades, what would that Jia say to you?
I think maybe, honestly, no one's ever asked me this question, but I think it's a very meaningful question. But probably just take it easy and keep going. Because I don't know for certain right now, but I do believe that I'm leading myself on the right path, especially towards success and financial freedom, because I do want to, travel around the world in the future, maybe even run my own business, support a family. So all those things. And with all the actions that I'm taking now, I'm very hopeful and grateful for what's going to come. And hopefully it all works out.
Amazing. So to our listeners, based on the wisdom that we've heard over the last few minutes, I think take that elder Jia's advice. Take it easy, keep going. The journey is worth it, and wherever you're trying to get to, if you have, Jia spoke about this, if you have the right actions and the mindset, then you shall get there.
Exactly.
Amazing. For listeners who are listening on a podcast platform, do like, share, and comment. We'll put all the links that you can find Jia on, her book, everything else in the show notes, so you can access that. And if you're on YouTube, we have to appease to the algorithm gods. That's the way a channel grows. So do like, share, and subscribe, and it'll mean the world to you, to us, and to you as well, maybe. Jia, any parting words before we close our conversation?
I think definitely financial freedom is accessible and available for everyone. In my book, even the class clown was able to achieve financial freedom. So definitely, if you have the right mindset, the actions and the knowledge, and the team around you, if you have that support community around you to help you keep going, then financial freedom is definitely something you can achieve as well.
Beautiful. Cheering you on, Jia, and always looking at all that you will be doing over the next few weeks, months, and years. And till we meet again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Ignite Neurons podcast. If you found value in this, here's what I recommend. Take out a paper or a diary and just put down one actionable, one thing that you can change about your life because you listen to this podcast. I'd really appreciate if you could share that in the comments below, because I'd love to see how it's impacting you or not. If you're on YouTube and watching this, then like, share, and subscribe, and please make this wisdom go viral. And if you're someone who loves your podcast on the go, then Spotify and Apple Podcasts are your go-to places, or wherever you're listening to this, just like, share it with a friend, and leave a comment, because I'd love to engage, love to have a conversation with you. Until next time, till we meet again, keep those neurons ignited, stay curious, keep learning, be someone who embraces a growth mindset, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.